Well, welcome in warriors and next level healers. Really excited. I am so happy to be here with you again. This is one of my favorite things to do is to hang out with my friend Dr. Taragperry here. So really excited.
Likewise, and connecting with all of our wonderful people that want to get their questions answered. And Leland, you've done the impossible twice. We all want to know more about how to do that and dive into the subconscious mind and access those trillions of bits per second going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to talk about some stuff today. Looks like we have Nashville with us, Brooklyn, Jacksonville, New York City, Fredericksburg, Virginia. And what is that? Oh, San Fran. Gotcha. Awesome.
Welcome, everybody. How many people here have attended or do any of Dr. Joe's work? Because that's part of an environment that Leland and I are pretty active in. Just type a Y if you're a yes and an N if it hasn't come across your path yet. Yeah, lots of Dr. Joe people here.
Yeah.
Yep. We love how he's turning how science and mysticism are connecting. This isn't woo-woo anymore. This is actual rubber meets the road change. So anyway, the reason we got started with all of this is that I interviewed Leland on my podcast. And again, if you haven't heard his story, we'll put it in the chat box before we're done here. But my podcast is Next Level Healing, and we went into his journey of being out on a wakeboard and having somebody take a dramatic 90-degree turn, and he got plastered onto the water at high speed and ended up in a hospital bed being told he'd never walk again or use his arms. And fortunately, he had a Ashtanga yoga expert as a PT who started immediately instructing him how to breathe into his neurological system. And lo and behold, he could right away start to feel his brachial plexus, which is this incredible nerve plexus right here, light up. And that excited him. And he just kept on going, kept on going, kept on going until he got his body. You're completely recovered, aren't you, Leland?
Yes. Yeah. 100%. Everything is back, thankfully.
And then he hadn't healed his inner wounds, which is really also important because if you don't heal those get in the way big time. So he ended up getting addicted to drugs and ended up homeless. And I mean, his story is just so raw and so candid, and so many of us can relate to it on so many levels. You know, the feeling like we're not good enough and we have to self-medicate, whatever that is for us, whether it's drugs or shopping, or, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And so he got deeper into what he's teaching people now, and healed himself of that. And then lo and behold, he gets hit by a car, ends up as a paraplegic, and he's like, "Oh my God, seriously, God, what's going on here?" And the benefit of that was that he was able to record and document the experience of healing the next time. And now, God bless him, he's teaching this to the military, and gosh knows they need it. So Leland, I'm just going to throw it over to you and just run with it and let us know what the latest and greatest is in the breathing world. You sent me a really cool breathing tape, which I love. I mean, I do it many, many times, and it's a softer version. I love that there's a variety of ways to do this. Some of them are really hardcore. Some of them are a little bit more laid back and relaxed. And it's nice to be able to mix it up so that, our neurological system has a variety of frequencies and energies to get into these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's an amazing introduction.
You're welcome. You deserve it.
Yeah, thank you. It's cool too because I kind of wanted to switch focus. There's so many different ways I could go with explaining the breath. And of course, this is Minority Mental Health Month. Last month was Men's Mental Health Month. We're obviously focused on women's mental health as well. So, with this, I just wanted to kind of show everybody the diversity as you just described. I don't poo poo on other people's breath stuff out there, but if you've noticed, usually when you do somebody's breath, it's usually one way, and that's the way that it is. And you continue to do that. And the beautiful part about what I have discovered through my studies in both psychology and neuroscience are that it's much more versatile than we could have ever imagined. I mean, just slight shifts like you experienced in the new one, with the breath patterns, with the way that you take the rest points, completely changes the entire experience inside of the body and inside of the mind. So it's pretty mind numbing the more I get into this and the more I study neurochemistry and all of these things, connecting the dots basically between all of this ancient knowledge that we both pull from, and now finding out that we're not really ahead of anything. We're actually now catching up to the ancient wisdom with our science
You
and
know,
knowledge.
it's so interesting you're saying this, Leland, because one of the interviews coming up on my show is the author of Stealing Fire.
Yeah.
And that's a reference to Prometheus. So this stuff dates back a long ways. There's been a lot of pushback from the state, from the church, and from biological, limitations. So we're going to go way deep in that. So I can't wait to share that with you when the time comes.
Awesome. Awesome. So, as usual, we're right on the same keel, eye to eye, like minds and all. I love that. Because, yeah, it's funny that a lot of the institutions nowadays are threatened by even the thought that somebody 3,000 years ago knew more than we did or had a better way of approaching medicine, especially, or health overall. So, what I figured we'd do is I would just do a quick breakdown for you guys of what the welcome home method is for anybody that I think everybody here has experienced it. Put a one in the chat if you're new and have not experienced it. Put a two in the chat if you have. So a two is a yes. Yeah. Okay. Lots of twos. Awesome. Any ones? Anybody not experienced this?
And it's totally okay if you're new to the scene. We want to know who you are so that we can best meet your needs.
Love it. One of my co-hosts on a podcast, Leslie, is here. So awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Awesome. Well, and to those of you that are watching this after the recording as well and have not experienced the welcome home method, it's a simple way of looking at what the basics of yoga is. It's funny when he walked into the room, and I think I told you this in our interview, when he walked into the room, of course, the first thought in my head is, dude, if I could move my legs, I'd kick you in the throat. Yoga. That's not funny. And then once I realized that yoga is quite literally 90 to 95% pranayama, or control of the breath force and life force in your body, and mindset, everything absolutely shifted for me. So when we look at the welcome home method and how I've created it, it is based off of ancient breath techniques. And I put that at the top of the list because unlike the state and unlike the government, like Dr. Tara mentioned, I love to give homage and pay respect to the ancient knowledge that we're now pulling from. Because if not for that ancient knowledge, I never would have had the inclination to even, go look at why these things made changes inside of my body. So when you look at the welcome home method, we have a few different modalities that are included in that. Most of you have experienced all this. One of them is called cyclic hyperventilation. And that's where you're just keeping the breath steady. Notice there's no pauses in between the inhale and exhale on any of my practices. And that's for a reason. That's to elicit a response in the body. We're shifting the absolute base program of your entire life experience, which is run by one program, your breath. Your breath runs absolutely everything in the body. It is the connection between your conscious and unconscious mind. It is the connection between being able to settle into the 5D when we would like to, because the only way we can actually release the body and become and settle into those relaxed states is with the breath. So the breath is this powerful connective force, and when we can shift it, we shift the absolute program that the body runs everything. The way it creates proteins, the way that it creates your blood, everything changes when you shift your breath. So cyclic hyperventilation is just that in and out, keeping it steady. And you hear me say it all the time, no pauses, straight to the inhale and exhale. The second part there is acute intermittent hypoxia. And we'll kind of open that up in some of the questions. I know a lot of people have questions about that. And that's where you're holding your breath. That's where I either have you inhale and hold or you're exhaling and holding. Either way, you don't actively have oxygen coming into the body. So that's considered hypoxia. The next one is cyclic sighing. And that's the one I'm sure a lot of you have told me this is your favorite breath, because that's the inhale through the nose and the sigh through the mouth, creating that sound and vibration. There's actually been a lot of studies done where just 5 minutes of that can actually blow away the effects of meditation of 15 to 20 minutes, just based on what's happening in the body. It's based on cymatics, which is all sound and vibration. So when you sigh, not only are you exhaling, and that is a parasympathetic or relaxed response, but you're also creating that vibration throughout the entirety of your nervous system. And then, of course, we have meditation, those rest points built in between the breath, and then neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, which is, I know it's still considered a pseudoscience to science, but so was neuroplasticity back in the 90s. So don't worry, they'll catch on.
Well, Tony Robbins was the big popularizer of that, and there's a reason he gets $1 million for 8 hours of his time.
Absolutely right. Yes. It's always funny that way anyways. The things they poo-poo on now or consider pseudoscience always become the leading edge of medicine later on.
I have a slide on that in my presentation, so we'll talk a little more about
Awesome.
that.
Good, 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 good. And this next one I won't spend too much time on because it's also in her presentation as well, just simply to show that if you pay attention to the iceberg, quite literally 95%, if not more, of your program, of your life, is all subconscious or unconscious programming. Everything is run by the unconscious mind. And again, I'll let her go further into that because she has that inside of there. But that's just basically to say that the breath quite literally helps you shift absolutely every program. Again, the way that your body is digesting food, the way that your mind works, everything shifts when you change that. And I won't go too much further than this because I love nerding out on this stuff. And this is like, this is what I give actually the doctors and surgeons as a lecture. And it can be like a 5 to 6 hour lecture. So we're not going to do that. But we'll stop right here on the reticular activating system because the reason I want to bring that up is it's quite literally responsible for the focus of what you're focusing on, what is important to you. It is important in the role of wakeful states, whether you're feeling sleepy or whether it's time to wake up. So that is the system inside of your brain stem that controls whether it's time to go to bed or whether it's time to start to rise. But one of the biggest functions that we know about the reticular activating system is that it's a filter. And if you think about it in the way of a website, you go to her website, you go to my website, you get pretty pictures, you get all these boxes, you get all these different things. But behind all of that, there's massive amounts of code. If you do know WordPress, oh my God, it's a whole nother language on its own. There's thousands and thousands of pages roughly of information just to create that website for us. In that same way, that's what your RAS is. That website is the filter so that we can see what all of that information actually boils down to. What's important? What are we supposed to pay attention to? Oh, okay, a picture of Dr. Tara and whatever her about page is, right? Same thing on the RAS, or reticular activating system. If you focus on something, then it's going to basically filter everything out, right? If you could take all the information in that's around you right now and process it all at once, your head would explode. There's absolutely there's no way for you to do that. So that's where the RAS comes in. The RAS is that filter system that allows you, keep in mind, you run the RAS. It doesn't run you. You decide what's important. You decide whether everything is good in life, or you decide whether your boss hates you at work. And no matter what you decide, your RAS's job is to pick up and pull information to prove you right. So that will only work the right way when you're in that right mindset. And since we're talking about mental health, that is one of the key areas of focus for the breath work. Yes, absolutely. It helped me learn how to walk again. It helped me beat cancer. It helped me beat addiction. But when I look at the root cause of all of those things, the reason I was even out on the lake, the reason I started taking drugs, everything else, it was from my childhood. It was from combat experience. It was from the stress that I had put on my life. And if you were to ask me what the hardest thing was for me to overcome, it would be the mental side of this game. Yes, it sucked to learn how to walk again for 2 years. You know, that did suck, but it was simple only because I knew I was going to get it. And I knew that if I followed the procedures and did what I was doing and continued to do my practices, that it was coming back. When you think of mental health is one of those aspects that are very tough on us, because if we're not actually affecting the chemical makeup of our body, if we're not actually positively shifting and changing the way that the mind is running or the way that the program is running, you're going to continue to get the same thing. And then, of course, we have illness, disorder, disease, all of those things that set in. And mental health is a big deal for me. I know most of you know my father died by suicide 8 years ago, just a little over a week ago. And that is one of the biggest missions for me, is just to help people recognize that with the breath, you can quite literally shift absolutely everything in the moment and long term. You know, it was one of the biggest boons to my healing journey, was using things like 60 seconds to freedom. For those of you that have used that technique, just 60 seconds absolutely shifts and changes everything inside of the chemical profile of the body, the way that my mind is running. It's mind numbing what happens when you pay attention to what you can do with your breath. And just to kind of hit that home for you on the power that you hold right here inside of this area of your body, there are a couple of things that are happening when you breathe and hold your breath. And this is very simple and very basic, but it's one of the things we don't learn. They don't teach us this stuff in school. They teach us basic biology and physiology and all these other things, but they don't actually go into teaching you how your pulmonary system, that runs absolutely everything in your body, works. When you think about it, when we're breathing the way that we're breathing, we're increasing oxygen, we're offloading CO2, and we're also increasing something called nitric oxide. And if you look at any of the insurance documents where they look at the number one cause of death, what they actually notice is an off regulation or a down regulation of oxygen, which creates most of the disorders and diseases that are out there. There's Gary Brecker's out there talking about it constantly. If you listen to him, he's one of the great speakers that stands on stage, talks about him being in the insurance industry for so long. And when we can shift our breath, we can absolutely change that. We can increase the levels of oxygen in the body. We can also increase the levels of CO2 in the body, which is what happens when we hold our breath. And we need that. It's not a waste gas. It's not a toxin like we used to think it was. It's actually something that is very crucial in unlocking the oxygen that comes into your body. So when you look at this, just simply remember, as you're inhaling, you're increasing the oxygen in your body, right? If you're doing it through the welcome home method, you're pulling in a lot of oxygen. As you hold your breath, there's no longer oxygen coming into the body. That's when the hypoxia starts. Now, you do have a lung full of oxygen because I've told you to hold after you've inhaled. But no matter what, as the oxygen starts to go down inside of your body, of course, the CO2 starts to immediately elevate as you're either holding your breath or as you're exhaling. And just shifting those things can absolutely shift and change everything inside of the body. I mean, when you look at the study, there's so many studies that are out there, including Dr. Joe's right now. When you look at meditation or any kind of mindfulness exercise, especially breath work, you're activating over 1,400 different chemicals, compounds, different processes and systems inside of the body. And
Everybody, I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, I thought I heard Tara without your, for a second there. I thought.
Well, I'm actually just pulling up the interview that you and I did so I can stick it in the chat box. So my bad.
Yeah, no worries. That's all good. I thought you were a ventriloquist there for a second. Anyways, so there are a lot of testimonials that we have from folks, not just myself. And I think that's the beautiful part now, is now that we have been teaching this breath work for the past 2 years, the stories that are coming out, that are the testimonials, are beating mine now. People with MS turning the disease off, stopping the progression of the disease. I've got other spinal cord champions now that are experiencing new sensation or new mobility. We've so many different testimonials out there, from cancer to mental health. Again, is one of the biggest ones out there. When you hear from any of the people that have experienced positive boons inside of their life, most of the time it is connected to some sort of mental health. And even for anybody out there that's dealing with any kind of physical disorder or disease, remember that the more that you work on yourself, controlling the breath, changing the things that you're thinking about, mentally digesting, those things automatically start to change as well. That's the beautiful piece about our psyche and physiology, is they are interwoven and interconnected. And the more balanced and parasympathetic that you can get, more relaxed, the more you can shift that program, the more that you can experience order and ease, all the opposites of what we see in our society, especially now. So I welcome you to check out our YouTube. I'll make sure I pop that link in here as well. We have a couple of free offerings that you can try there. There's a minute long, which is the 60 seconds to freedom. There's the 5 minute long breath blast in there as well. And there's a 60-minute for those that would like to work on anything neurological. And from there, you can find me on the website as well, where we have more information about not just the breath work and either working with me one-on-one, but also the classes that we have. One of the things that we have is a 5-week self-paced course that's in there called the Fundamentals, and it runs you through even more of the basics. Just that was a taste of what is involved in the breath and what it can do for you. So there's some other things out there, and inside of that program, there's multiple practices. And we also have our membership, which is all community based and amazing, just filled with practices. So there's so many different ways that I can help you. But the biggest thing is that we're out here and we're spreading this wisdom and knowledge. That's obviously why Dr. Tara and I continue to come at this. The money thing always handles itself when we stick to our purpose. We're never really concerned about that. What we're more concerned about is making sure you have everything you need to make the shifts and changes in your life, because we know it can be quite a mountain to climb when you either get bad news about something that you've got to work on, or you just hit one of those rough times in your life. And sometimes we don't have all the tools. And I know when I look back at my 20s and 30s, God, I wish I had all of this way back then.
Oh my God, what a game changer that would have been.
Yeah,
and another thing that's great is when you see parents that are modeling better examples for their kids. I mean, so one of the positive benefits to you and I touching lives is that not only does it affect that person, if they're an employer, it affects their employees. If they're parents, it affects the kids. It really has a big cascading effect, which is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you can reach out to either one of us. Of course, there's plenty more information on the breath. That's just the beginning of that. But I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Tara, who is an amazing hypnotherapist and helps you work with your subconscious. Like when you think about it, how did you describe it? I can't remember the way that you described it. It was the best analogy I had ever heard.
Well, hopefully I'll go through it again in the presentation. And as we're doing these presentations, please think about any questions that you want to be asking, because at the end we're opening it up to Q&A. We really want to reach out to you individually about any questions that you have, any particular struggle that you have, so that we can help meet your needs in real time. So I have been helping people. If you go on my YouTube channel, my Instagram, you'll find there are stories on there, people that struggled with all kinds of things. Again, as Leland said, 90 to 95% of our brain is our subconscious mind. So if your conscious mind wants to go in one direction and your subconscious mind wants to go in another, who's going to win that? That's why people are all the time going like, I don't know why I still drink. I don't know why I still smoke. I don't know why I still, shop too much. Whatever the addiction is, an addiction is just something that changes your state. It takes you from one place that you're in that you don't want to be in. It's uncomfortable and you want to change it to something else. So you reach out to the substance, whatever it is, sex, drugs, rock and roll, and you're trying to fill this hole. So the way to be over that, to be done with it, is to fill the hole so that you no longer have the need to fill that. So your conscious mind is processing about 40 bits of information per second. Your subconscious mind is processing 40 million bits of information per second. And to Leland's point, as far as, why you haven't heard about this, because I get all these crazy results with my people, whether they've been struggling with PTSD or insomnia or phobias or addictions. And as David Perlmutter said, where's my David Perlmutter slide? Come on, there you are. He is a doctor that teaches other doctors all over the world. He wrote Grain Brain, which you're probably familiar with. His latest book is Drop Acid, not the lysergic acid type, but your uric acid in your body, because it does correlate strongly with all-cause mortality. But it takes 18 years for good information to get into mainstream medicine. Well, most of us don't have that long to wait. William Davis, who wrote the famous Wheat Belly book, and Undoctored, he got tired of giving everybody drugs and surgery because he found that just lifestyle changes could, solve the vast majority of problems out there. So he says there's no ham and hamburger, there's no grape nuts, and there's no health and healthcare. Not that if you get in a ski accident, you want to run to your acupuncturist or your breath worker. You kind of want to get that taken care of. So I've been helping people for over 25 years. I've taught at UCLA and Emperor's College in Los Angeles. And people that have struggled with things for a long time, like this is Joanne. She hadn't slept for 7 years very well. She only got 3 to 4 hours a night. She was about to lose her mind because you've got to get rid of a quarter ounce of toxic material every night. And as Leland, I'm sure, knows, this is why it's such a problem in the military, because these guys can't get a decent night's sleep. So they never recover.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And she said, I don't know how you did this. You didn't even mention sleep. She had been through regular sleep therapy. It didn't do anything for her. And I said, I didn't have to. I just had to remove the emotion that was preventing her from sleeping in the first place. Bliss had never been part of her life. One beautiful aspect of this work is that when you remove those old painful filters, those ideas that you're not enough, you're not good enough, things are available to other people, but you don't deserve it. You're unworthy. You're different. If you have a belief, and right in the middle of the word belief is lie. It's a lie. But if you've got a big fish in your subconscious mind that's eating up all these, positive fish that you're trying to get growing there, that just doesn't work very well. The brain oddly prefers a familiar hell to an unfamiliar heaven. So it's not going to make that journey until it can see, oh, that's painful. That's not who I am. That's hurting me. That's causing danger. Then it'll be willing to let that go and make that journey to where you do want to be who you really are. I always say people are like an iPhone 14 operating on iPhone 4 technology. Is that the one that you like so much, Leland?
That is the one. Yes, I like that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And people can relate to that because if you have a great phone, but it still has the old technology running in it, and that's not going to go away until you upgrade it. If you have a computer and you delete something, it doesn't just disappear until you write over the program. So I find that most people are living in some form of anxious exhaustion. They're living in the sympathetic nervous system mode. That switch is thrown. They're frustrated. They're angry. They're sad. They're living in some form of the sympathetic fight or flight, meaning your body wants to run, it wants to fight, it wants to freeze. A lot of people just want to become invisible and they can't understand why they can't get out and do the things that they need to do in their work, or fawn, which is the people-pleasing people. So the good news is I don't have to figure it out. You don't have to figure it out. When you get into that delicious, relaxed state where you're between alpha and theta, that's that beautiful, relaxed state where you're daydreaming. It's very normal. You're in it when you're coming in of sleep, going out of sleep, in meditation, focused on something. Advertisers love it because when you're sitting there in front of the television set, going, they're just putting information right in your brain, which usually isn't to your advantage. So people, who had been through 16 years of therapy, I hear constantly how people have been in therapy their whole life, daily panic attacks, deep trauma to their whole being, and now their soul just feels like it should. And these are the things that really thrill and delight me. I feel like Glenda the Good Witch. I'm not giving anything back to people they didn't already have. They've just lost sight of it. They've lost connection with it. This gal had seen her husband catch on fire. She developed PTSD symptoms. Lyme, mold, babesia, mast cell inflammation. These are all very, very difficult things to treat with any kind of medicine. And she had become allergic to all but 5 foods. She had been seeing the best doctors, neurofeedback, biofeedback, acupuncture twice a week. And in just the first session, she was able to experience more peace than she had in her entire lifetime. And after the 3 sessions, she just doesn't have those issues anymore. Again, these are all on YouTube and Instagram. This gal had been attacked by a Rottweiler. She had been through 6 jaw surgeries. She had developed a choking disorder so that every time she ate, she was at risk of going to the hospital. She was living in pain and fear. And in her first session, she goes, oh, this is what I need. After 2 sessions, she didn't have those issues anymore. I do work with people over 90 days. I find that people have layers to them, and I want to make sure that we remove, a big giant chunk of the problem so that they're, somewhere between 50 and 100% better after the 3 sessions. And that's typically what happens. I do have a complimentary call that people can reach out to me, and if they're interested in working with me, we can just see if it's a good fit. This gal had horrible medical anxiety. She was running to doctors all the time. She wasn't sleeping at night, and regular therapy had made her worse. She came in for her third session. She says, "Look, I don't have any of my symptoms anymore. I just came to say thank you." This gal had horrible medical trauma when she was a baby, and Leland was talking earlier about how we get those old patterns stuck in our bodies, and that just doesn't go away until you go in. This gal had been through 4 years of really intensive therapy at the University of Santa Monica. Fabulous program, but in just 3 sessions, by accessing that incredible powerhouse of her subconscious mind, she was able to, get out of that learned helplessness. This is a really common thing that we see in people who have whatever form of trauma. If you were born, you probably have trauma. I mean, it's just part of the human condition. So she was able to feel insane amounts of love and like she was walking on clouds and no longer running up against the invisible walls. I found that it works even really well for physical issues. This guy had 40 years of back pain from breaking his back in a motorcycle accident. He had done lots of meditation, lots of Dr. Joe, got great value from that, but still had the back pain. And so I said, look, you've done acupuncture, you've done chiropractic. Why don't we just go into your subconscious mind and find out what's going on there? And in just 2 sessions, he didn't have the pain anymore. I said, are you surprised at how quickly it went away? He says, no, I know how powerful my subconscious mind is. And he's also on my YouTube channel. So if you go on my Next Level Healing, you can hear all these different people. Business owners love it because they're able to get into their confidence, get into their zone. They're able to supercharge their success with less effort, and triple, quadruple their success. I had another gal that I met at a Dr. Joe event. She said I didn't have any problem asking for money when I was a lawyer, but as a gallerist, she says I just don't. I can't ask for money. I feel like I'm doing something wrong. And the answer was completely not something that she expected. And in a few sessions, we just straightened that out. And now she's selling paintings for $30,000 and $40,000. Here's addiction issues. This gal had a lifelong struggle with sugar, and in just 1 session, she didn't have those issues anymore. So whatever the issue is, whatever you're pressing up against, by going into the subconscious mind, it's really stunning how available and quick. I hear over and over again, I hear how fast the changes are, and that's one thing that they really love about this work. So I'd love to just open it up to questions because Leland and I love this part of the process where, we've sort of planted some seeds. We've said some stories about what's available. What are you guys struggling with, and what can we help you with?
Yeah. And you guys can use, if you look at the 3 dots or if you see reactions, you can raise your hand. It's a great way for us to know that you have a question.
And the only bad question is one that's not asked.
Amen. I agree. I so agree.
There is no stupid questions, especially when you start getting into quantum physics, which this all touches on. Life gets really expansive. Yes, Selma, we'd love to hear your question.
Yeah, please.
Can you click her in and
Yep, I'm gonna bring her up here with us. And
and then Nazia has a question after that.
oops, I clicked on the wrong person. I clicked on Sarah. Here we go. Okay. Hey, how are you?
Hi. Hey, I wasn't planning that I'll gonna be asking the question, but it's coming up.
Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Both of you, I haven't been working with you, Dr. Tara, yet, but with Leland, yes. So blessed. Thank you. I wanna ask, I'm not sure how to frame it, sorry. Right now, I feel so overwhelmed, and I'm not sure if it's also the freeze response or all of it. I kind of, as you're talking about conscious and subconscious levels, I get it kind of like, I think cognitively, I did whatever I could at this point, having awareness and biology of trauma and like all those things. And we have all those amazing tools. And at the moment, I'm at the point where it's not that I want to give up. I will never give up. And at the same time, it's like, I don't know how to keep going. I'm just tired. Even from meditations and from breath work and like from all of it, which is awesome and so helpful and transformative. Yes. And I'm just at the moment of like, almost like I need a break. I don't know right now how to keep going. I'm just exhausted. I'm tired. I hit some wall. I know there's more to do and heal and all those things. Everything you're saying resonates. I find myself in all those stories and been through tremendous traumas and stuff. So just some thoughts, ideas. I don't even know what's my next step. I'm just kind of at the moment of like, less is more, and almost like I need a break from everything. And I don't know if that's a good idea or just how to keep going.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong in taking a break. Change it up. But whatever's working, do more of that. Whatever isn't working, do less of that. And sometimes we just have too much on our plate. And it's as important to say no as it is to say yes. If you do want to chat, I do have a half an hour consult where I'm happy to just, see if this is a good fit for you. Consulttara.com, and I can put that in the, and we can just chitty chat and see, what direction might be the best thing for you.
Okay, that sounds great. Alrighty.
Thank you. It was brave of you to even bring it up. Thank you for asking.
And that's not uncommon. Leland, did you just feel like it was a straight line when you were laying there in a hospital bed, not able to use your arms and legs?
Absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. I had plenty of those moments myself too. And if you think about it, and your work, Tara, and mine, what you just highlighted is probably the most common thing that I hear. So just so you know, right now, you're experiencing something normal. Very normal. Is it something you want to deal with? No, absolutely not. But that's where we can come in for sure. And I know.
And if we have a talk, I think we can get some additional clarity on that.
Yeah.
All right.
So Nazia, you had a great question. You said, I've done hypnotherapy before more than once. How would this be different? That's a great question. Is my screen still being shared?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's up in the corner.
Okay. Okay. So that's all we need. So I'm a little bit of a hybrid. If this is hypnotherapy, what I do is like a teeny sliver. I don't actually know anybody who does what I do because I've got 23 years of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. I've studied pranic healing. I've done hundreds of hours with Dr. Joe, hundreds of hours with Tony Robbins, and I trained personally with Marissa Peer. So I have a very big toolbox. And I do find that that's necessary because when you're interfacing with somebody and kind of opening up a path to their subconscious mind, you need to find a way in. And there's different ways in. And once you find that way in, it's not difficult to flip it around. So that in fact, I own the domain name brainakido.com, and anybody who knows martial arts, you don't push against what you think you don't want. You pull it and then redirect it. So you're actually taking the thing that you feel like is the thing that you're fighting against and turn it into your ally. And that's kind of a difficult thing to explain in 3D because, again, the subconscious mind speaks more in pictures. And so when I take people down and look at where the beginning, the root, the cause of the issue is, images will come up, phrases will come up, memories will come up, and then you want to find that pattern. So it's part art, part science, as is acupuncture, I would say. And I loved acupuncture. I did that for 23 years and people got outstanding results, but this is just so much better, deeper, faster. I can't not do this. Even for physical issues. So migraine headaches and TMJ and, anything worse with stress, I can turn that clock back because the stress is coming from most of the time. Sometimes it comes from nutritional imbalances. I mean, if you're eating sugar all the time and your blood sugar is doing this, it's really hard to feel good. So basic nutrition, basic exercise, basic life skills, being kind to others, being kind to yourself. Forgiveness and gratitude are huge energies. So I kind of weave all of that in, and then I have a weekly support group that people get on and encourage each other, share their stories, share their wins, share their challenges, and it's really crazy about what comes up in these groups. In fact, it inspires me for my next podcast. I just recently came across. Are you familiar with Leland Ho'oponopono?
Yeah.
Well, I was familiar with it for years and I use it in my practice all the time, but I didn't know the guy that was famous for curing a whole psychiatric ward of a mental institution, the criminally insane. And he did it without even seeing these people.
That's awesome.
So I'm interviewing the author of that book coming up in 6 weeks
Nice.
too. I'm insanely excited about that. But
Yeah.
it's just crazy. And again, quantum physics just weaves into all this. And Leland and I have been to many Dr. Joe events where he explains the science behind this. And it's really just it's so next level to, to use the phrase in my podcast, next level healing. But this is really next level and it's very exciting. And I love that Leland's taking this into the military because, the more we can make it available to people and not fight the establishment, but just have it, out there and available to people, the more exciting it is. And then, like Dr. Joe says, anybody that breaks the 4 minute mile just makes it so much easier for everybody else to do it. So, Leland, yeah, but I mean, anybody who does the impossible is now a huge inspiration to everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And there's so many more people out there besides myself, and Dr. Tara as well has had her experience with paralysis. There's millions of people out there that have overcome paralysis, have overcome, you name the life-threatening condition that's out there. And it all starts with the switch of everything in the subconscious, offloading all of that horrible energy that gets kind of thrown down into your nervous system. When you think of, the best way to think of it is when you think of having a thought and then an emotion following it, that's an electrical signal followed by a magnetic signal. So those two together create our electromagnetic signal, right? We are electromagnetic beings. So every time you have a thought, there's electrical signals that are going on. Every time you have an emotion, there's magnetic feelings that are happening through the body. All of that gets stored. It doesn't matter if it's something that you thought about and then you changed what you were thinking about. That thought, that stress, that activity, and that response, that event is stored inside of your tissues. And
you take a strong event and a clear thought and a strong emotion, and those cement into your brain. And those actually form very powerful neural pathways. And when you're thinking the same ones over and over and over again, day after day, week after week, month after month, decade after decade, that takes a little tweaking to unwind. And you can do it really quickly, but it's going to take another powerful thought and another powerful emotion that's inconsistent with that and replaces it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think the best way to say it to, for the folks that I've dealt with is I've always told them exactly what you just said is, you have to run the program or the program will inevitably run you. If you don't run the things that are inputted into this electrical, amazing storage device that is biologic, but it is literally a computer in every way, your brain, if you're not running the program, running those, what do you do with your computer? It's constantly asking for updates, software, this and that, right? You have to do the same thing to your own system as well. There has to be constant updates, refreshing, dumping off cache, all the things that you do with your computer, you have to do with your brain. You have to do with your body as well. And a lot of what Dr. Tara does and what I do is helps you with exactly that, helps you to offload the things that have been stored.
I want to make a comment about what Yasmin just wrote in the chat box, because it's interesting. I have worked with a lot of military vets, and I would say pretty much almost always, if not always, they go back to childhood more than they go back to fighting in the military. And that's where usually between the ages of 2 and 10, I mean, I get people who go back to the womb or earlier than, in childhood. Yeah. But that's where they learned that they were overwhelmed, and if you've got a father who's an alcoholic or, mother who's bipolar or whatever the challenge is growing up, and, we all have challenges growing up. Sometimes it's stupid little things. I had a woman who's incredibly capable. She's an oral surgeon and she never felt comfortable asking for money. And she said, "Can you help me with that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's just go in and find out where that got." And she was doing her homework and her sister was even smarter than she was. So her father said something harsh and she took it to heart. She's an incredibly sensitive, amazing woman, which makes her an even more awesome dentist. We just, in one session, we took care of that. And I called her up a couple of months later and I said, "Hey, how's it going?" She says, "Oh my God, I go home with more energy. I'm a better wife. I'm a better parent." I said, "Dollar wise, what's it worth to you to be able to ask for what you're worth?" She says, "About 10,000 more a month." from one session, just going in and fixing what needed to be updated. You know, she's not the iPhone 4 anymore. She's the iPhone 14. She's like, oh my God, I spent all this money, time, and effort learning how to do what I do. I can actually ask for money in exchange.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you handle the underlying program, right? And thank you, by the way, for your service and sacrifice, Yasmin. I love having my fellow brothers and sisters with us. It is absolutely crucial for all of us to get this out there to everybody everywhere. Because one of the things that we've talked about before on some of these are that they don't teach us this stuff. This is stuff, what Dr. Tara does and what I do, what Dr. Joe does. They should be teaching you that in elementary school. Those are the things you need to be learning: how to grow food, how to handle your body and mind, and all these other things. So it's an honor, absolutely, to be able to.
It really is. And I'm so grateful to everybody I've had the chance to work with. A lot of these people have become my friends. Oh, by the way, you're going to love this, Leland, but I ran across a study that showed by doing a drum circle here, this is free, everybody, 90 minutes once a week for 6 weeks. It lowers inflammation in your body. It decreases depression and it decreases anxiety. There, free tool. So I read this and I started a drum circle. So now I have a drum circle at my house once a week.
I love that. I love that. We go to one out here in St. Pete, and I didn't know about the study, but I know based on Qigong, one of the things they do every morning is they stomp their feet 200 times. So I love that you just brought that.
I will send it to you. It's a beautiful little study.
I love it. I love it. I'm definitely checking that out.
And just one more comment. I had somebody in the military who was gifted my program from an aunt, and he got 100 on his PTSD scores. He had done all the military stuff. He was still having regular panic attacks. He was still not able to focus on his work. And after 2 sessions, he looked at me and he said, "It can't be this easy. I don't have my panic attacks anymore. I'm able to focus on my college level work, and God, thanks."
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just, and again, you read Stealing Fire and you're like, oh, okay, there's been a lot of really powerful tools around for a long time.
Yeah.
And there's just these forces, and it's like some forces want, all this stuff to be available, and other forces are like, no, we can't do that. It's too much.
Yeah, it's too much, or there's no way for them to control
There's
it.
no way to control it.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of their big ones. Like, can I make money off of it? Can I control it? Okay,
Yeah.
get out of here.
And the truth is, and Mike Murphy, who I'm going to be doing a webinar with, I should introduce you guys. He's got a whole beautiful healing resort down in Medellin, Colombia.
Nice.
But there's room for everybody. Just everybody find their lane, find out what you're great at, find out what you got over. And there's a whole bunch of people that need to learn how to do that. So you can always find a way to plug in and help.
I think that's an excellent thing to make sure people understand. Literally, there are billions of people out there that will most likely never find my work, Dr. Tara's work, Dr. Joe's work, but they might find yours. They might find,
and they might understand the way you say it differently than other people.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to like remind people too.
They might be able to relate to you more than they can relate to Dr. Joe. I mean, I love Dr. Joe, but there's so many people it's like, I can't handle his voice.
I hear the same thing. Yeah.
And I love him. And it's like, I kept saying, well, can you just get over it? Because the goodies on the other side are really wonderful.
That's funny.
And fortunately, he has toned it down a little bit. I don't think he needs to be the Wizard of Oz quite as much as he used to.
Yeah, he has. But it's the same thing comes from some of my veteran brothers. Whenever I've done, I'm like, I promise, if you just push past that on the other side, that goes away. I promise that goes away.
And your healing is not in your comfort zone. Your comfort zone is that old pattern, because the brain really thinks, oh, if it's safe, it's familiar, it's that's what I want. Yeah. That's what the reptilian part of the brain thinks. So in order to go, and I work with people that have an 8, 9, or a 10 need to change, and an 8, 9, or 10 commitment to change, because it takes that. Because again, that unfamiliar heaven, until it becomes familiar, the brain's going to default to that familiar hell.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of piggyback onto that, Selma, thank you again for that rawness and vulnerability and sharing. I myself have experienced that just a few months ago. And I know many other people that are experiencing that. And one of the things that I really focus on with anything, no matter what your modality is remembering that all of you is welcome here. Remember what Dr. Tara just said there. You are not going to find your healing in the comfortable, cushy spots. So sometimes what's needed is just allowing yourself to be there. Now, of course, I don't want you to ruminate. I don't want you to catastrophize. I don't want you to like feed into those negative energies. But if there's one thing that I've learned from breath work and from yoga, is there is such a power in just allowing yourself to be a mess. If you're a mess right now, it's okay to be a mess. It's absolutely okay because you probably dealt with something. So everything you're dealing with right now is a normal response to trauma. And that's one of the first steps, is normalizing what you're dealing with. It doesn't mean just deal with it and push it to the side and make yourself happy with what you're dealing with, but just recognizing that you are righteous in either your indignation or your anger or whatever else. All of those things are normal feelings to be coming up. And I think one of the things I know I did early on in my healing journey was, pushed all that stuff away and went into a meditation, or pushed all that stuff away and went into a breath. And in that way, it became a coping mechanism for me. So what I've learned through all of this study and breath work and heart math and everything else is to allow myself to use the breath to sit in that moment, but yet find a state of what we call coherence, that normalcy, right? That homeostasis, where everything is in some sort of normal pattern. That way you normalize again the way you're feeling. Because if you don't allow yourself to feel angry or sad, then you're always going to repress those feelings. So it was one of the biggest powers and one of the biggest tools that I use with any of my clients is heart math. And a lot of that is just about being in that space, allowing yourself to breathe even. And if you guys want, we got enough time, I can do 2 minutes of it with everybody and let you guys kind of experience that.
It's really cool to just realize, and yes, let's do that. Obviously, if you're driving, don't do that. But I just want to add one more resource before we do that. 2 minutes. Jill Bolte Taylor is on my my YouTube channel, and she's the one that had a stroke of half of her brain, and talked about the recovery. She has a book called Whole Brain Living, and you can actually understand what these different sections of your brain are trying to do. And it's typically that what she calls character number 2 in your brain. That's the logical, emotional part of the. I'm sorry, yeah, the left emotional part of the brain, and its job is to keep you safe. And it's the one that's going to tell you how stupid you are, how lazy you are. It's the one that's going to put you down all the time because it wants you to do different things in order so it can be safe. But the whole, like Leland says, give yourself grace. If you can create a brain huddle and get to know these characters in your brain and see that they're all part of the team, they're all trying to help you. They're all, they're trying to do a service, but they're iPhone 4 technology and an iPhone 14. So they're stuck in an old pattern, and that's the painful part.
Yeah, no, that's a really great way to speak on it. And when you think of it in that way, y'all, allowing yourself to just visit, like I like how you said that, the characters in your mind, associating yourself with even those dark parts of yourself. The reason they continue to come up is because most likely from childhood, like myself and many others, that little guy has been ignored. That character has been put in the dark or put in the closet or made to just kind of sit in silence. So of course it's uncomfortable. It's unknown to us, that side of ourselves. So just associating yourself with that inner voice and allowing yourself to sit in what we're about to experience. And this, you guys actually can be driving. If anybody's driving, if anybody, you can do this with your eyes open. That's the beautiful part about heart math, is the techniques that they teach. It's very similar to they, just like everybody else, including myself, pulled from ancient knowledge and used a very even pattern of breath, which you're going to experience, to create coherence. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to relax the body, enter that parasympathetic or relaxed state. And in that moment, you start to create coherent patterns from your heart, which is actually brain number 1. So when we can do that and allow ourselves to what I call sit in the soup, then you can absolutely change that soup by recognizing it, by paying attention to it. The voices in your mind are seriously asking for your attention because they haven't gotten any. So if you can just shed a little light and show all those characters or whatever's coming up for you that all of you is welcome here, it allows you to kind of shift and change. That's true transmutation when you think about it, right? Just like Dr. Tara said, you're not going to figure out the problem in the soft, cushy areas. You're going to find the solution out there, bumping your head against the wall, dinging the fender and scratching the paint. That's where you're going to find it.
And when you get to the point where you can actually love these parts of your brain, that's really exciting.
Agreed. So wherever you are, you can experience this. You can do this with your eyes open. For those of you that are sitting down and would like a more calming and internal sense, you can soften or close your eyes. Just let your hands rest on your knees. Focus on your heart. And imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area. Breathing a little deeper and a little slower than usual. You can inhale for 5 seconds and exhale for 5 seconds, or whatever rhythm is comfortable for you. So long as the inhale and exhale are even. And set a meaningful intent to anchor in inner ease or stillness, to balance your mental and emotional energy. Tune in to any messages coming from the heart. Give yourself permission to bring that back, implement it in your life. And at any point in time, you can come back to this safe and still place. Slowly start to make your way back. Gently and slowly, and when you're ready, you can open up your eyes. There we go. And that's just an example of, again, you had a rough day. Something continues to pop up in your mind. Give yourself a moment of pause to normalize the hormonal, the immune response, the emotional response of the body, and watch how that situation changes for you. Or like Dr. Tara said, you eventually start to love those parts of your mind. And eventually the conversation becomes, oh, you're so silly. I can't believe you even tried to get me to go there.
Very good. So amazing how just a few minutes can make you feel completely different.
Agreed. And I think Valerie has a question. I'm going to let you take the lead on this one.
Are you taking off on us, Leland?
No,
Oh, okay.
not at all. I'm here. I just wanted, I want to let you take the lead on this one. This is a great question from Valerie.
Okay, what is it, Valerie?
So Valerie put it in because yeah.
Oh,
so
okay. Hold on one second. Let me find my chat box.
It's in the chat.
Yeah, I can't find my chat box. Hold on one second.
No worries. So I'll read it to you. Hi,
okay.
I can't speak, so I'll write my question. What if the trauma, emotional conflict has now led to a motor neuron disease, creating mobility and speech issues?
That's a great question. Oh, we can both answer this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is what I love about this work is if there's a stress component, whether it's trauma, stress, whatever, again, it's the brain that's constantly, sending the body the signals that it's got to hide, fight, run. And there's a guy that back in the 1950s called Hans Selye, who documented the chronic, it destroys your tissues to be in chronic stress. So absolutely work with, call me up, let's have a conversation, but do whatever it takes to get that sympathetic nervous system turned off so that you're in parasympathetic, and then your body, your spirit, your brain, your tissues can get the signal that it's okay to heal. You're safe, because if there's no time to heal, your body's got to be in panic. It's like an on-off switch. You're either running, fighting, fleeing, fawning, the 4 Fs, or you're going, oh, things are okay. I can turn on my digestive system. I can turn on my hormonal system. I can turn on my immune system. My tissues now have an opportunity to heal. And what I found by going into the subconscious mind is we can supercharge the healing components. Like my mother, I have a slide in my slide deck, which I didn't show you, but she was walking down the street at age 89. She was looking up, hit a bike rack, landed, and smashed her kneecap into 13 pieces. Well, anybody that has worked in healthcare with older people knows that that can be a life-ending injury. So after the surgery, I said, Mom, I know you look terrible, but take a picture of yourself. You're going to be the fastest healing case on record. I made her an audio to make the muscles believe that they were working out, even though they were immobilized, because that's the kiss of death, having muscle atrophy. And then I made her another one to speed heal that patella, that kneecap. And in 3 months, she was scampering up and down stairs. In 6 months, she was going up and down ladders at age 89. I've got video of it. I can prove it.
I love it.
And so, again, it's just, do you want to work with the part of your brain that's processing 40 bits of information per second, or the part that's processing 40 million bits of information? And I always tell people, look, it's not your fault. You weren't born with an owner's manual to your mind. This, by definition, is subconscious. It's below your level of consciousness. So if you can't figure it out, don't feel bad. If you had the answers, you would have figured it out already by now.
Yeah.
So the way I work is to get in touch with the emotions, 99.9% of the time. I typically give people my magic wand, which is behind me, and say, well, what are 3 emotions you'd give anything to not feel anymore? So those are things usually like fear, frustration, anger, resentment, and then wave the magic wand, and those aren't there anymore. What do you most want to feel? And it's usually things like calm, peace. Sometimes it's forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others. I just worked with somebody who felt like she hadn't done the right thing for her child. And there was she felt like a price to pay for that was, and she's been beating herself up for decades over this. And in just the first session, she's like, oh, okay, now I get it, that, I can be free. I feel like I get to let people out of prison for a living. And that feels so good.
Yeah. I think that's the best way to put it. I love that. I love it. Yeah, it's exactly what this is why our work like crosses so many areas and avenues. I mean, if you're not working with the subconscious mind, you're missing the mark. You really are. If you're not actually diving into the program that's running, like Dr. Tara said, absolutely every aspect of your life, then nothing will ever truly change. So yes.
Actually, you had talked about the reticular activator system, and in this interview on Stealing Fire that I'm doing, there's actually a word, because if you think about it, we only see this much of the visual spectrum, we only hear this much of the auditory spectrum.
Right.
So that reticular activating system is saying, okay, don't pay attention to everything. You only pay attention to this tiny sliver. So there's a word called Umwelt, and that means that's the amount of reality that you actually perceive.
Right.
And if when everything is dumbed down, and you look at just what we're able to perceive and then what we choose to perceive, the idea that we're perceiving reality is pretty much zero.
Agreed. Yeah. And this has never happened to me, but has anybody ever jumped off of the short end of the stick and gone off on somebody because they forgot something or they didn't give you this? And then when you finally calm down and you recognize it was right next to you, or you put it over here. So yeah, in that same way, it's kind of funny how the reticular activating system says you must pay attention to just this right here. Don't nothing over here. And
There's that There's that great experiment, and then anyway, let me know if you have to get going, Leland. Let me know.
Oh no, you're
There's
fine.
this wonderful experiment, and when you fall prey to it, you're like, oh my God, where these people are playing basketball, and your job is to count how many times the ball is passed between certain people in certain colored shirts, and at the end of it, they go, okay, well, did you see the gorilla that walked through the screen? And you're like, what gorilla?
Yep.
And then you watch it again, and there's a freaking man in a gorilla suit who comes right into the middle of the screen and like pounds his chest and then walks off. And you didn't see it because you were too busy watching the ball bouncing. And then you have to ask yourself, what else am I missing in the world?
Yeah, exactly. I've seen the similar thing, except it was a dancing panda or something. But yeah, there's so many variations of that, and it is mind-numbing how you can literally, that guy was not there the first time that I watched it. He was not there. And then the second time I watched it, absolutely was right there in front of my face.
And then there's one of a magician, and you're watching the magic trick so much that you don't notice that like the background has changed a completely different color. He's wearing a completely different shirt. You know, everything has changed in it. And you're sitting there going, I didn't notice any of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we had a question from Brenna as well. This kind of feeds into what we're talking about. I think this is an epic one. Do you think this deep energetic work should be more of a priority for healing anything physical? And she's asking because obviously the mental and emotional side, then the typical 3D healing.
Do you think this deep energetic work should be more of a priority for healing anything? And hello, Prena, I love you. You're one of my people, and I think you're working with Leland too.
Yeah.
Mostly, I'm not sure I totally understand the question. Do you, Leland?
Basically what I think she's asking is this the deep energetic work that we're talking about, is that more important to focus on?
Energetic meaning going into the subconscious mind, or because
Yes.
okay.
There she goes. Yeah, I was gonna bring her up. Bring her up. There you go.
Like, okay. Sorry, I know. I was like, how do I word this question?
Yeah.
So basically, you guys both obviously know I'm recovering from a spinal cord injury. So like balancing, the typical rigmarole of hardcore PT, fire, rewire versus doing this work on so many levels, because there's so many different levels. Like, do you think that this work is more impactful to spend more time doing versus, these typical 3D modalities? Obviously, these 3D modalities are important, but where you place the intention, right? Like, should you spend more of your effort, your energy, your time in this work versus doing something else, or should there be a balance?
So that's a really awesome question. I'll take a stab at it, and then I definitely want to hear what Leland has to say. But I mean, even if looking at Dr. Joe's work and environment, there's a mix of physical and mental. And Brenna, and you might want to comment on this, Brenna, when you do the subconscious work, when you connect to that subconscious mind, do you find that your subconscious actually is very good at guiding you as to what it needs more of and what needs less of?
Good question. I think maybe to a certain degree, but I wouldn't say it's like guiding me in saying like, oh, you should do more PT. I think it's guiding me in like how to release and surrender more of the things that I need to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you release and surrender what is in the way, what isn't serving you, do you find that you're better able to do your physical work?
For me, it's hard because I have a strong attachment to seeing results.
Yeah.
Something I need to work on. So I think what it's allowed me to do is work on releasing that expectation of seeing day to day, week to week, month to month results. And I think that's something that's been powerful for me, being a very athletic doer type of personality, where, I train harder and I see better results faster. That's not the process in neurological recovery. So I think it's helping me let go in that sense, but it's, like it hasn't necessarily sped up the physical yet.
Yeah. And as Dr. Joe, well, and if you've got an injury, the 3D world is the slowest of the frequencies, and we have to get that that the pattern in the quantum healthy so that it can imprint on the physical. And wouldn't you agree? Am I saying that? How would you say that, Leland?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when you look at quantum science, the field itself is what creates all of this 3D expression that we can visibly see. So, of course, you change the information in the field, you change the 3D experience completely. So, yeah, it's
and I would also say high performers that beat themselves up do need to kind of address that, because if that's the predominant frequency, that's not optimal for healing. Would you agree with me, Leland?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the studies that I just read yesterday talks about one of the worst and most negative coping mechanisms in the society today is do. I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. I need to do.
And even Tony Robbins, who, used to work himself all the time and, spent huge amounts of time in the gym and would cut his sleep down to nothing because, that was just not for cool people.
Right.
He now realizes that, oh, that nice chunk of time to sleep is actually imperative.
Necessary.
And the rest time is also really important. So I would say, to answer your question, well, I to me, the subconscious mind is just this treasure trove of power, and you want anything in there that's getting in the way of your healing, such as being a perfectionist, being hard on yourself, I mean, there's you can have high standards and go for that, but you've also got to balance it out with giving yourself grace, because if your body only gets the message that it's not good enough, that's definitely not an optimal frequency for healing.
Yeah.
So and just in working with people all the time with physical stuff, I found that it's so important. They say seeing is believing. You got to flip that around. You've got to feel the success of having done it. And Leland, you can talk to this because this is frustrating. This is a big challenge. Dr. Joe talks about it too. When he's upside down in a hospital bed, with every vertebra broken, and he's just refused surgery. The idea of I'm not good enough, am I being stupid? Am I, all that stuff. You've got to balance the I mean, when I was paralyzed from the neck down, and it wasn't nearly as long as Leland was, but I mean, I fixated on I was just going to be the fastest healing case on record. I didn't beat myself up. I give myself grace. And, like when you're going through those periods where you feel like you've got a bald eagle parked on your, your shoulder as your shoulder muscles are starting coming back into, online. Um, it's a combination of being intensely focused, but in a way of just profound grace and gratitude.
Yeah. I think that's probably the best way I would have ever explained it. And I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what I found for myself was when I look at the beginning, the very first 3 days, especially, and I'm just sitting in the bed beating the hell out of myself for why did I go to the lake? I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have been there. I had nothing happen except for horrible experiences and more horrible experiences to follow that. Even the day following, when that shift happened, and just the moment I decided this is not going to be how my life plays out for the rest of my life, and that change, like you mentioned, of the brachial plexus lighting up, that all happened when I look back at it now, because same thing, I was intensely focused on what I wanted. I knew that it was mine and I was going to achieve it. And then I also recognized there were some times where I would still have my PT, I would still do all those things, but I experienced grace more than I realized then about I felt like crap in the morning. There's no way I can do my PT right now. Instead of being that guy that's like, oh, just push through and keep doing the thing because you got to do it. There were times PT would move to the afternoon or whatever because I was going to do some breath work or meditation.
And as we all know, if we push too hard in PT, we can take a lot of steps backward really quickly, and we don't want to do that.
Huge steps.
So, and just another comment, your brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So you really want to get in the state of, I've already achieved it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's,
and you want to have the juicy emotions. You want your brain to be releasing all those juicy, because as we're going to talk about in that Stealing Fire interview, your brain's releasing all kinds of incredible emotions, anandamides and serotonin and dopamine and neuroepinephrine and oxytocin, and you want all that to be maximally in your favor, and you can do that if your brain is believing that you've already achieved what you want.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny too that I'm glad you brought this up, Brenna, because that's why I created Awaken the Warrior Within. That's the 12-week full transformation course, because we have yoga in there. So it's not just the breath work. I felt like a lot of people are missing the mark thinking that I cured myself with breath work. I did. I healed myself with breath work, but there's other pieces to that, right? The yoga aspect, the mental, the mindset, the unloading of the subconscious. Of course, breath work, I give, 80, 90% of it, but it came from yoga. So that's what we do in that program, as well as finding that balance. And this is why I use heart math pretty much all day long for myself, finding that balance of what do I need right now? What do I truly need right now? Not what do I need right now? What do I truly need? Right?
And that's where going into the subconscious really pays off. And Brenna, I know you experienced this, because when you go in there and you find grace, you find love, you find joy, your brain thinks, oh my goodness, I've already achieved it. And then you can have all those chemicals being released in your brain that really speed the healing.
Yeah,
so you want to drop into that as much as possible. And that doesn't mean don't take care of the physical reality that needs to be taken care of, where whatever your optimal physical program is for recovery. But don't overdo it, because if you don't give yourself the rest time, you can take a lot of steps back really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny too, right? When we pay attention to all of the testimonials that you hear on Dr. Joe's stage, a lot of the testimonials for myself, all of your testimonials, when everybody talks about the success that they had, especially on Dr. Joe's stage, it's always that they started to love themselves more. They experienced more grace. They gave themselves more space. They stopped ruminating and the negative conversation.
They got out of their head and took that 18-inch super long journey to the heart.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, it's the same thing. I wouldn't stop the PT and whatnot, but keeping
I would say getting that subconscious optimal, I just think is essential.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Because if you've got that giant 95% of the iceberg going any direction other than the direction that you want it to be going in, it's not helpful.
Exactly right. Yeah. And I know a lot of people love to get high on their own supply who have done the welcome home method, but it's so much more than that. It's literally, that's why we work together, Dr. Tara and I, because in the same way, if you don't control the subconscious, it's going to control you. If you don't run the program, it runs you. And one of the ways that we can access that, she has a beautiful modality that I absolutely love. And one way you can access that is with the breath, of course, right? When you're feeling that high on your own supply, I don't just do it so I can feel good in those moments. I do it because it makes my subconscious mind pliable and accessible. It allows me to have conversations and notice things that I wouldn't notice when the ego's in control and the mind is driving the body.
And if you can get to a Dr. Joe live event, I think both of us would recommend that.
I would highly suggest it. In fact, I'm having somebody work on my website, and there's down in the corner there will be an homage to our mentor, Dr. Joe, there, because I think if you haven't been at least once, go experience it once for yourself. You'll come away with so many tools. Awesome.
Actually, yeah. I'm just gonna mention one other thing here, and then again, and I've got to find out better ways to get this listed on the thing. But on my YouTube channel, there's about 3 weeks ago, I posted an interview with this gal, and she called it the best week of her life doing the Dr. Joe live event. So if you go on my YouTube channel, Dr. Joe, Dr. Taragperry, or Dr. Tara Grace Perry, it might be, but you'll see interviews like that, and she's recovering from MS. In fact, you've been in touch with her. That's Stacy. Yeah. And she called it the best week of her life, but she was able to do things that she just hadn't done forever, like, walking further than she'd walked in months, and sit cross-legged on the floor and do a 5-hour meditation. She never could have sat still for that long, and done that. And not only did she do it, she was like, okay, let's do it again.
I love that so much. Yeah, I love Stacy. That's awesome.
So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Leland, is there anything else that you'd like to give out as a goodie? Tell people where they can get in touch with you, discount codes, anything like that?
I'll just throw in my website here.
Perfect.
There is the 60 seconds to freedom that is above there. But other than that, yeah, just remember, the only thing I'll say, and I'll let you close it off, more of you, and by that I mean all of you, is welcome here. Accept more of yourself, be more in touch with yourself, and recognize this is the one person that doesn't get enough attention. No matter how much work you do on yourself, you will never get as much attention as you give. So give yourself as much as possible, please.
Yeah. Loving yourself, loving others, giving yourself grace, giving others grace. That's why I love the prayer of Ho'oponopono. It's please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry. So it captures so much in just 4 lines. But you're giving yourself grace, you're giving others grace, and there's just a lot of power in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, y'all. And thank you. I appreciate you so much, Dr. Tara. Thank you.
It was great here to be with you, Leland. I love it, as always.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you guys. Have an amazing, amazing day. And we'll be doing this again. So just pay attention to your emails and messages, and we will see you very soon.
Bye.
Take care, y'all.